don't know what we can talk about in this nation without talking about white superiority, honestly.
Who defines the meaning of God also defines the relationship between economy and God.
African Americans spent $1.3 trillion last year, making us the 16th wealthiest nation in the world. Why have we not turned those riches into wealth to develop our community?
Peace, family. So good to be with you guys this evening. I see that, I was looking in the chat and I see that you guys are talking about the weather. I guess there's a storm coming, but it's winter, so I guess it's always storms coming. And I'm from Detroit, where we have the ultimate storms. So this is it's good to be in New York, where the winters is not as wild as, they're kind of mild. They're kind of mild. So let me just first say peace to everyone. I see Lucio, Ogawa, y'all are just in the house. And if everybody can just, drop down, in the chat where they are chatting from. And while you're doing that, make sure you are liking and sharing this video. Okay. Now, anytime I'm spelling extra hard, it's usually because a couple people are behind stage. Usually Professor James Small, he always got me smiling. Now, Dr. Oba Tashaka always has me smiling too when he's backstage. So this is going to be a great show. It's so nice to talk to, scholars who can talk about anything. That's the thing, and have like information. They're just not like just making up some stuff. They've actually done research. They've actually observed life. They've observed themselves. And so when they come and they sit down and talk with us, they're bringing all of this. And so, we are very blessed to have our elders around. So Dr. Tashaka, he's about to get it in a few. All right, Syracuse. Okay. All right, Shanoa from the D. Yep. See, I know the D is cold already. And Stephen from DC. That's what's up. So let's just start off with the first thing. Make sure you are liking and sharing this video. Liking, sharing, and sharing this video. It's very important that we get the word out about what we're doing and what Dr. Tashaka is doing. Okay, so it's very super important, okay, that you comment and then you just like and you share it. And I know we had Jabari Ozazi on it was like a couple of months ago. I mean, he was just on a couple of weeks ago, but I remember when he came on last year and he talked about this idea of threes. So he's like, everyone needs to do things in threes. So you should, send the video to at least 3 people. Okay. Because what we're talking about tonight is going to be dope. This is like our special edition, Black Excellence. And we're talking about Black love and the revolution. Okay. And it's not how you think we're going to talk about it, because, why would you when we have Dr. Tashaka here and you know how he gets down. So this is going to be, really exciting to have him in the place and, to talk about this. So I need for you guys to like and share and comment on the video. Now, also, we are, getting ready to what's the word I'm looking for? We're getting ready to have a huge event that will be going on in February. But before we get to that, I do want to tell you the importance of viewership, right? Of viewership. Make sure right there, we're close to 30,000 family, okay? And all the people that are already hooked up to us, everyone that's already hooked up to us need to be hooked up to Dr. Tashaka. Okay, it's because we are all like the same. We're all the same. We're all giving out really good information. So, we're only as good as our weakest link. So it's very important that everyone's numbers come up. So if you guys I know you guys are looking at our stuff because I see you guys looking at it, but you need to make sure you're subscribed to the channel. It's super, super important. All right. Now, our event, this is going to be Excelente, okay? February 4th, we are doing the first HAPI Movement presents a day of Black excellence, okay? I'm going to show you guys a flyer because we just need to just first appreciate all the people that are going to be, at this event right there. Okay. All right. So right there, this is going to be a fantastic event. And I know that some of you guys have gotten your tickets, but you guys forget, I can actually see who bought tickets and who didn't. Okay. So you guys are in the chat tomorrow, I got my tickets. I'm like, no, you didn't get your tickets yet. But listen, family, this is going to be a whole day of events. So for, we're doing this at JPAC in Queens. It's from 1 to 8 p.m. It's probably going to be 1 to 9. It may even be 1 to 10. But we have Dr. Ken Harris, who will be our host. He also hosted our event in Detroit, the One Africa returning to the One Africa Power and Unity Conference. He was our host. He's also the president of the National Business League, Dr. Ken Harris. Now, on this, this day of Black excellence, we have Dr. Susan Tata will be in the house, Kaba Kabane, Professor James Small, Mfudishi Juhutimis, Dr. Georgina Falou, and it will be headlined by no other than Riza Islam. So that's just like a portion, okay? Now we're also going to have some musical, guests. We have Brand Nubian will be performing a couple of songs. We have Jamar Milton, conscious rapper. He is wonderful. You guys need to listen to his music. And we're also going to have we have this poet who's going to speak, lyricist. So she's going to be in the house. And then we're also going to be showing some special clips. They're like extended clips just for our Black excellence audience from HAPI, the role of economics in the development of civilization. So Taaqiy will be, showing part of the film. And we also have Amadeuz Christ, which will be in the house. And if you guys saw our show before, he's going to bring the green hat. So that's going to be fabulous too. But he is going to be there with his film, Heavy as the Crown, Volume 1. Okay. So it is a whole day of events. And then we're also, because HAPI is all about Black entrepreneurship. It's also about networking. We have put in a lot of time so you guys can network with each other. But if you want to vend, we have like a few seats left to vend. We don't have a lot of space like we did for One Africa. So this makes so if you're coming to vend, you will have a captive audience. Okay. So that's, trust me, you might want to come and get your vending ticket because I'm sure after Kwanzaa, those tickets are going to go. Yeah, so, we're going to have this, this event. It's going to be all day. And we're going to be talking about Black excellence because Black excellence looks, it's very, in our community. So it's going to be a nice event. You're guaranteed to leave feeling good. You're going to feel good coming, but you're going to feel even better leaving because it's really a nice day of events. And yeah, so, make sure you get your tickets. Just go to happyfilm.com and there you can get everything. Like I have on my Nubia shirt. We have shirts, we have the DVDs, you can get a download. Everything is up on happyfilm.com. But, that's the event, family. And you want to make sure that you are supporting as part of the HAPI movement. And you can meet other people there. We've been seeing a lot of people kind of traveling with us from place to place to place, which is nice. So, we made a lot of connections at the One Africa conference. So yeah, so make sure, family, that you got, Takesha, I know you got your tickets. And Takesha is coming from Detroit. So you New Yorkers, there's no excuse for you guys not to be in the house because we got a lot of Detroit that will be in the place. So family, make sure you support. This is how we keep being able to bring things to you, by 100% by your support. All right. So, we can't even begin to have a talk about Black excellence without Dr. Oba Tashaka. So I'm going to bring him in. Yay. How you doing, Dr. Tashaka?
Fine. How you doing, Sister
Great,
Felicia?
great, great. You know what? Y'all just don't know. I tell you, this little man right here is delicious to me. And well, actually, he's been very tall. I mean, I haven't met him in person, but um, I'm just so happy when you come on because I know you're about to say some new stuff. We talked about what we're about to, talk about a little bit because the cool thing about Dr. Tashaka is like, we don't like to put everything out there when we're talking because we like to leave it, new. And so we can really like discover stuff. But the last time he was on, and this is where this conversation is picking up from. So the last time he was on, he said a little something, and it was just like a little, like 2 lines, and I was like, "What? I ain't never heard of this." And I said, "Oh my God, you got to come back and talk about this." So this idea of creativity being our genius, we want to kind of really get into that, okay? And before I get on to that, let me just tell you, everybody in the chat is going wild and they say, "Hey, Baba Tashaka," everyone's like saying hi to you. So that's really, really super cool. I'm actually going to put, yes, true Black excellence is Black love. Yes, yes, yes. Put some of these up here. So first, before we get started, do you have anything to say, Dr. Tashaka?
Yeah, as usual. I enjoy being on your show because I enjoy your sincerity and your partner. We vibe good together. And when the vibes go right, everything else is going to be cool. And I want to say to the people who follow HAPI and some who are on my show, support HAPI, and they're for real. Y'all are for real. And that's what I like about you. You're a real sister. Oh. And what I also like is you don't play around. I mean, you got a nice grin and everything. People like that. But you're serious business. I like that.
Yes. Play around. I love that. Oh God, that's funny. Yeah, I try not to play around. Yeah, well, let's leave that right there, Dr. Tashaka. Mm-hmm. But thank you. You know what? Sincerity recognizes sincerity. I just think about the first time you came on our show, and the fact that you just said yes. That's the other thing. We're so happy when when we reach out to people and and they're like, "Yeah, well, come on," and it was nice. It was your birthday, so I thought that was like really super cool.
Yeah, especially when you had a surprise package. James Smalls, who I see in on this chat, that was extra special.
Yes.
One of my favorite people on the planet. Brother's doing good work, and I'm getting ready to watch the next installment of Godfather of Harlem, which he's put the political input into. So,
yeah.
Look forward to that.
Yeah, he's no joke. I would hate to just come. I would hate to have to, come up on either one of you guys, to be quite honest, because you both of you guys are real. You're very nice. Like, oh, look at the nice elders, but you guys are you're no joke. Put it that way. So I really appreciate both of you guys. All right, Florida's in the house. They're probably the only person that's warm right now because everywhere else is cold. Except for you're in California, so you're nice and warm too.
Yeah, I'm doing good. My wife just came in from London, and she was freezing. She was in a room one night where the heat had gone out. It's below zero, so So she's now in her warm bed.
I know that's right. Yeah, let me tell you, I love heat. All right, so let's get into this creativity. All right, so first of all, can you just give us a working definition of creativity? So when you talk about creativity, what are you talking about?
Okay, in the context of this, and we'll go into it later, this is really for the purpose of discussing what is the essence of Blacks in this country, the ethos, the way we carry ourselves, what makes us unique in the world. And every people have a unique quality, and every culture the people have an ethos. And so the ethos of Kemet, while it was a very creative civilization, was Ma'at, clearly. And that's ethos comes out of, you could almost say, historical accident, because it's the circumstances that shape a people. Now, they play a role in that, but it isn't always planned. But in the case of Kemet, I think that Ma'at was, and they're building a civilization. So having a civilization based on just order, right order. And they tried to live up to that. Doesn't mean they always did, but that was the goal. Or if you go to the Yoruba, their ethos is Ori, destiny. That's what's really special about that culture. And that they have a real clear idea of why we're here, what is our purpose for being here, and their systems, their spirit systems are very much guiding you in that direction. Now, other cultures have this too, African cultures, just like all African cultures have a Ma'atan, foundation there, but it's not necessarily their ethos. Ethos really defines what is distinct about a people. And so in the case of the African in America, creativity operates on different levels. So depends on what you're talking about. You know what I mean? It's not just one level of creativity. But basically, I would say that all Africans and all human beings draw from this impulse that God is within us. The essence of God is creativity, and therefore the essence of a human being is to be creative. So that's where all human beings draw from. That doesn't mean their cultures are centered on that. It doesn't mean their cultures encourage that, but that's the nature of being human, you know?
Okay.
So in the case of the African in America, what does creativity mean? It has to do with how we created our definition of self as a people. And contrary to popular opinion, slavery did not destroy our culture. We ended up creating a new African culture. Whereas in the Caribbean, we continued the culture of Africa alongside of European influences. It's called the culture of hybrid, meaning one culture alongside the other. And then, of course, they intermix. But because they were the overwhelming majority in the Caribbean and South America, in the case of Brazil, the culture continued automatically. It underwent change because of enslavement, because of the circumstances of the times, and they were influenced by the culture of the oppressor. But basically, they continued in African culture. And in speech patterns and, a whole lot of other things. Their music, a whole lot of other things. The African in America was in a different circumstance because we were not a majority on this landmass. This country was in the process of becoming a successful settler colony, meaning the whites were in the process of exterminating Native Americans. As they succeeded at that, they became the dominant group numerically, even though in the South, we were dominant in South Carolina and some other areas. But overall, they had numerical dominance, and therefore they could get into your business more. And so the effort here was to eradicate the culture. And a lot of us have bought into that. But culture is a way of life and designed for living. The only way they eradicate a culture is to eradicate a people. And as long as the people live, their culture continues to exist. So what happened here was we had to wage a war to recreate and continue African culture. And I call it a new African because we brought in here the same thing that Africans brought in the Caribbean and South America, African culture that shared a common cultural unity. But then it came under attack. And so what we had to do is go inside ourselves and recreate this, reformulate this, and also add things that we needed to survive here, which I call New Africa. For example, race consciousness is New Africa. The African in the Caribbean is not race conscious. There is a race consciousness with a few people, and the African in Africa is generally not race conscious, except for South Africa and a few places. Usually, as some scholars have said, if you find an African in Africa who's race conscious, that is conscious of racism and also what that means in African American culture, then they've been exposed to us. You know, so race consciousness is new because here, with the intrusion of whites all the time into your business, even though the majority of blacks were enslaved on big plantations, therefore, in time, our people came to see that what we had most in common was our blackness. And then, of course, those things that come under blackness are features of African culture, and the Africans who come here share a unity of African culture, largely, with some differences. Some were Muslims, some were not, but even the Muslims were more traditionalists than not. So the point is, what does creativity mean in the African American context, the New African context? It grows out of us being inventive enough to create a culture that is based on fundamental African principles with new additions. And in the process of that, recreate ourselves suited to this reality, to the point that today this is the popular culture of choice of the United States and of the world. And it is also the classical culture, driven by jazz, which is the highest expression of our art form. So we not only created a culture, we created an art form. So culture at a fundamental level for us is the recreation of self and our own identity, and having the luxury in the confinement of slavery to actually go to the highest point of a culture and create an art form. So that is the distinguishing quality. So in their effort to wipe our culture out, we create a new African one, and full of beauty. And at the same time, we have the time to have an art form. What enslaved Africans have time to have an art form? Now in the Caribbean, we had an art form. It's a continuation of African art forms. But we created a new African art form grounded on the spiritual blues. So creativity is recreating ourselves into the people we had to be. So the essence, so our ethos is creativity, because that's how we came into being. We had to draw on very creative internal impulses to come up with that. So this is deep inside of Black folks in this country. It is our whole card. It's our strength. Your conference on Black excellence, Black love, Black excellence. Black excellence is Black creativity. I mean, that's the essence of it. And there are levels of it. It's not just a level of creativity. Mm-hmm. Well, we are the most creative beings in this country. I've heard Africans say this. A friend who was in Black Studies at San Francisco State from Guinea, we're having a holiday dinner, and he made the comment, this was his comment: the African in America is the most creative and innovative being on the planet. That was his comment. The guy educated at the Sorbonne in France, and at Stanford, a mathematician. His son graduated from Harvard, a special kind of mathematician. But he could see that. I already knew that. But for him to say that, I said, oh, well, you understand what you're dealing with here. So our very survival has been based on this creativity, which all people have. I'm not saying we're the only ones who are creative. I'm saying it's our ethos, And it's how we do things. However we start something, the way you like to do a show. You don't like to have some predetermined pattern. You don't even like to have the people coming on the show to know exactly what they're going to be faced with, because that's your ethos. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And plus, it just kind of looks like it's scripted. And then if we're going to do a scripted show, we might as well do, the Oba and Felicia scripted show. But okay, wait. Oh my God. Okay, and I saw somebody in there saying that Felicia's taking notes. Absolutely. And y'all should be taking notes because first of all, I've never really heard anyone break down like the difference between Africans who were brought to the United States versus Africans that were brought to like the Caribbean islands. So that right there, I was like, damn, that makes sense. I'm just thinking about all the experience and just, the different people I know and just what's happening in the world. What you just said literally makes sense. So, and I've never really heard anyone say that not only, were we, creative enough to, survive and survive here and create a whole new Africa, but we create a whole new art form. Like, that's dope. I mean, like that's wild. So, one of the questions I wanted to ask you about this whole idea about creativity is that what happens, or do you think that most African Americans take their creativity for granted?
I think that a substantial number of Black people and Africans in America appreciate that we're creative. I don't think most are aware that our culture, most are in a position of questioning whether or not we have a culture. I think that
that's true.
A body of Blacks know we do, because culture is your way of life and design for living. And every people have a way of life and design for living. But we've been sold this story that slavery was such a miserable institution that they just broke us and that, our culture went down the tubes. And a lot of our scholars have supported that. Particularly those who, E. Franklin Fraser and others who have taken that position, even the Nation of Islam. A lot of activists in the 60s who won't admit it now took that position. Even Malcolm said it, but if you looked at the way in which he moved and a lot of the things he said, he was coming from two positions and he was reading a lot, and he had a lot of experience in terms of African American culture, but at the same time would make statements like that they had wiped it out and all the rest of this stuff. And what's true in that is, you couldn't use the drum here. We had to bring back the drum after slavery. But we put the drum into our rhythms. It was in the spiritual blues. Gospel music is polyrhythmic. And it's true that no Africans in the Western Hemisphere just continued to speak Yoruba, Asante, whatever ethnic group they came from. But what we did in the Caribbean, South America, and here is we continued to work into our speech pattern a Niger-Congo Bantu linguistic pattern. And that's clearly 80% of Black people speak that, At the same time, they speak straight up English, those that do. My first wife came from Bayou Fort Orche in Louisiana, and she couldn't speak English. She had to learn how to speak it because what Black people were speaking there was straight up Niger-Congo Bantu speech patterns. You know what I mean?
Wow.
That has continued, and that's one of the real continuations of African culture that you can't get away from. But you couldn't maintain kings in societies except for those where you could do maroonage and go into the mountains somewhere and continue your societies, as you could do in Jamaica, in Haiti, and in the swamps of Louisiana. But for the most part, that institution couldn't continue. Neither could clan or lineage, because you weren't brought in whole family groups here. You know what I mean? And if you were, you're going to be separated.
Yeah.
But what happened is the core of African culture continued. And so a lot of us do take creativity for granted, even when we know we're creative. You know, we just kind of take it for granted. Like Martin Luther King, when he was describing the success of the Southern freedom movement, he said, well, we just got creative and came up with methods that work. Just got creative and came up with methods that work. That's a big deal. You know what I mean? Now, he knew that, and because he came out of Black culture, but it wasn't something that he was heavily focused on either. You know what I mean? It wasn't that he took it for granted, but it wasn't like the thing that would come out of his mouth. You know what I mean? That he'd be thinking about. It wasn't like the fire and brimstone speeches he'd give to Black people, but it was in him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that to some extent, it's stuff we live on and take for granted. But some of us appreciate it and know just how it works. And I saw somebody saying, like we like to create on the moment. That is the essence of the African in America. And that's described in the slave narratives, where an enslaved African had said in a slave narrative. These are narratives that were compiled during the Depression by the Work Projects Administration of the Roosevelt administration. So people went around interviewing people who had been former slaves or enslaved. And so one of the most memorable things was a statement where an enslaved African said, we think of something African and we create it on the spur of the moment. That's improvisation.
Yeah.
That's not the highest level of our creativity either. That's what most of us are good at. But there's something higher than that. So that's the essence of us. So there's another myth that we created, whatever we created was something out of nothing. A real fat myth. You know what I mean? What are you talking about? You gave birth to humanity. You got 149,000 years of history according to mitochondrial DNA with the Chua, the world's first people. So that's in your cellular memory. You know what I mean? So you got 400 years of hell. Now, which one is going to carry more influence?
Exactly.
149,000 or 400 years? And so you can say whatever you want to about it, you're going to still act out what's African in you. You know what I mean? So, for example, all African cultures are founded on the same first principle that most of our historians don't want to talk about. And they'll usually say they don't want to talk about this because it's common for all people. Some of them will say they really question this because they can't quantify this and put it under an objective evaluation. They can't prove this. You know what I mean? But the fact is, the foundation of all African cultures is the same. And what is that? Spirit, baby. Not spiritual.
Yes.
That's a theory. There's no word for spiritual in any African language. Spirit, baby. And what do you hear Black people talking about all the time is the Spirit told me.
Yes. Yes.
Of the day, I'll say it 3 or 4 times. I'm getting my feet done. You know what I mean? And, you know, a sister was saying, baby, you know, the Spirit told me.
Yes.
You know what creativity is? It comes from the Spirit. And what is the essence of the Spirit? That's God within you, God within every human being. You know what I mean? So that's the foundation. And you know, when Africans coming into this reality, or the Caribbean or South America, wherever it was, Spirit was a major weapon they carried. Spirit-based culture. And that empowered us, and it gave us powers, and it put us in a different mindset than our oppressor. It enabled us to outthink him. That's one reason why we're still here and thriving, even though we're catching hell at the same time. We're also giving some hell now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's because, when you're drawn from spirit, and that is like your foundation, then you're drawn from a deep well. Whereas if you're just dealing from empirical thinking, which is based on see, touch, and smell, that's all you're looking at. That's the only thing that's real. So you're going on observation. So somebody's smiling. What does that mean?
Yeah.
I know you know the difference.
Yes.
Average brother or sister who's really grounded knows the difference. They'll look at the eyes. They'll look at what's happening with that smile. Is that a genuine smile where you just the whole face lights up? Or is that a fake? Smiling faces, the song in the 60s.
Smiling faces
that lurk within. Just don't think that because somebody's smiling at you. Like Malcolm said, just because a fox comes up and smiles at you, don't think that's a friend. He said, that's a member of the canine family. He getting ready to eat you. Because he's going to get a good meal. You know what I mean? So that's the nature of New African culture. It's got fundamental African principles, and then we had to repackage those differently in this reality. And at the same time, we added new ones, and spirit is at the top. Spirit.
So, it's interesting. Sometimes you don't know what you have until you're around someone who doesn't have it. So, I'm not naming any groups of people, and I think everybody could probably, think about the whole group of people that they might perhaps work with, and some things that come very easy to you. I've been in situations where something's come real easy and I'm like, wait, maybe that's not the right way, because I see other people that it takes them a longer time to maybe obtain something that is just, it feels it's just innately in who I am and others. Right. But I think that sometimes we just don't really recognize that. Let me give you an example. So at the Black Enterprise, the Black Excellence, the Day of Black Excellence that we're going to have in February, we're going to have Amadeuz Christ. And I'm going to send you his website, because you need to look at this brother's film. And anyone in the chat who has not seen Amadeuz Christ film, Heavy as the Crown, Volume 1, Out of the Darkness, y'all need to see it. Okay, so in this film, he has all these beautiful animations, and they're beautiful. It looks like something that you would like. The animation it's so at top of the line. It looks like something that might be like in Star Wars or a Disney film or something like that. So I'm talking to him about it. I'm like, wow, these animations. He's like, yeah, I just kind of got on YouTube and I looked at some videos and I took my time. And I'm like, wait, what? So there's people who are actually sitting in school now who are studying animation for years, okay, to try to, be able to do half of what this brother did for a whole feature film. And so I think sometimes, that we are so not always aware of, what's in us until we are, up against, someone who doesn't maybe perhaps have it, or someone else tells them like, wow, that's really, that's like, I can't believe you did whatever that is, So I think that's really important.
Or some people think that creativity is only the exceptional thing, like you're the greatest singer or the greatest scientist or whatever. But it's a quality that our people have on an everyday level. My great-grandmother poor as a church mouse and had a huge family. She was taking care of my grandmother's children, and that included my mother. And so, she would have to go into the shelf to come up with something to cook. And this is at the basic level of how creativity works.
Yes.
And so she would get them all wired up because she barely had anything, but she called it. Now, if she'd all called it slop, they wouldn't have looked forward to it. She called it slop gullion.
I love it.
And it was a mixture of everything she could throw together and put in a pot. And that's what you ate. That's creativity. And that's what's kept us going. You know what I mean? That's kept us going.
Yes, and that's why we're doing this event. This is why we're doing the event, because yes, we're going to be showing some people who, are seemingly at the top of their game, but everyone has it already in them. And if you don't believe us, I mean, Dr. Tashaka just laid it all down perfectly. Okay. But it's really a day, of reflection, for everyone. We have live stream. You can come and if you're going to be in New York City area, come and check us out live. But at the end of the day, it's so that we can start looking at ourselves, at all the things that we do, because it's Black excellence. No one else does it the way that we do it. And so how does this idea of okay, wait. Let me just confer to my notes, because you've been saying a lot of new little things out here. Make sure before I ask you this question. So, it is important. I like that the idea that you just gave in terms of what creativity looks like, because a lot of times, when I hear creativity, I always just think of like the arts. Like, the arts, like people are creative in arts. But can you just talk about some of the other areas that we are creative in, that we don't always recognize as creativity, like the example that you just gave? What are some other areas?
Yeah, creativity is in all areas of life. And what I would say is part of the reason that we were inspired to draw on this is that we had to recreate a culture. So that's the key thing. And the key thing I want to stress here is that this is what brings us into being. Like what brings the Kemites into being is the noon, the watery mass. It's not really watery, but out of which the Ta comes. So every new occasion, they go back to the first occasion of the noon. So in us, every time we strike out on something new, we always do it by going back to the spur of the moment, or what Dizzy Gillespie described as the essence of improvisation, which is drawing on discipline, which is the precondition for freedom. Discipline, in fact, is freedom. When you're disciplined, you're pretty well free to do a whole lot of things. And if you lack discipline, then whatever it is you're doing is going to lack some substance. So this applies to all areas of life. So the enslaved African, for example, the enslaved African came in with this idea that God dwelled within them and that no one had the right to put them into this savage condition. So they came here between the ages of 16 and 30. They came in here with African courage, virtually all of them. They came in here as fighters, and they resisted what was being put down on them. And this is true for subsequent generations as well. And so how do you know that? Because had the Civil War not occurred, Blacks would have probably broke the back of slavery through petty maroonage. What's that? Running away, And so we can talk about the brainwashed house Negro, and yeah, we had some, but the reality is that the house Negro ran away at the same rate as the field Negro or field Black. Whenever there was an opportunity, they ran. Get the hell out of here. You know what I mean? Yeah, and there were a few who were really brainwashed, loved the master more than the master loved themselves, but not that brainwashed. They wanted to be free. You know what I mean? So examples of creativity is everything we do. For example, I have a good friend, but this is normal for mechanics. He's one of my former students. He's a mathematician, but he's also a master mechanic, and he's a master printer. Ustadi Kadiri. And in fact, I had him on the show. I did a 3-part series with Julius Garvey, Marcus Garvey's son. You should watch that 3-part series. Julius Garvey is heavy. That is one heavy brother. Well, the sign of a creative mechanic who's Black is just either let them be around a car and hear it, and they can tell you what's wrong with it, or tell them some of the symptoms and they can tell you what's wrong with it. Now, with a white mechanic, 9 out of 10 times, they've been trained to have a process of elimination. So they're going to test this, test that, test the other thing. But a good master mechanic is going to know right on the spot what's happening. And I would say that in all areas of life, that is how creativity works for us. Whatever it is we're doing, on that spur of the moment, we have enough discipline that we know what that is, whatever it is. So usually for musicians, for example, that's piping, it's mastery of your instrument. So that's the discipline. And then it's piping into the vibrations in a moment and playing according to that. That's the real good, either improvisational or innovative musician. You asked Coltrane about a piece of music he played a year ago. What did it mean? He couldn't tell you 9 out of 10 times, because it depended on what he was feeling at that moment, which is the vibrations around him, you know, the vibratory forces. And what are those forces? Ultimately, the good forces are God. God is infinite force outside of space, outside of time. So if you can pipe into God, then, you know, you're at another plane. Now, we all do it in some ways, or a lot of us. We have dreams, and some of these come true. We have intuition. But then there's the higher realms where people pipe in to God. That's a different realm. So in Kemet, you had what you call Sia, Hu, and Heka. Sia, exceptional intellectual clarity. Heka, Hu, authoritative utterance, your speech. Heka, powerful action. Some of our scholars have translated this to mean so you think, so you speak, so you act. It's a little bit deeper than that, because Sia isn't just thought, it's exceptional intellectual clarity. They didn't just say thought, they said clarity. Now, I have a friend who's a mathematician. He said 93 or 94% of our ideas are no good, you know. Now, maybe it's not that high, but there's a lot of ideas that run through our head ain't worth following. And then there's some things that we end up doing that ain't right. But when you're dealing with Sia, exceptional intellectual clarity, that means intellectual thought that's exceptional. That means beyond the ordinary. The empirical mind don't work like that. You know, empirical, you know, with wisdom, you can get some insights. You'll see some people that put some things together. It's pretty deep. But exceptional intellectual clarity, that's when you pipe into God's mind. That's the highest level. But you can only get something out of that when you've done the discipline and whatever your gift is. You've mastered the elements, but you haven't come up with anything innovative. You come up with some, you know, like you're a musician, you got your own little sound within somebody else's sound, or whatever it is, if you're an athlete, you know, or whatever. But the thing is, when you pipe into God's mind, you see things that haven't been seen before. It's God's truths. Everything that's discovered is not new. Nothing is new, except that the insight, the exceptional intellectual clarity, that's new. Einstein's theory of relativity, that was new. Not that he invented it, he discovered what was already there. The periodic table of chemistry, which comes through a dream. Chemists had a dream, and that's the periodic table. George Washington Carver, all the stuff he did with science, he was piping into God's mind all the time. My stuff on the mother principle, twin lineal families, that's a big fat breakthrough. That came from God. It's my term, but the notion that just societies of Africa were those where all the males and females were equally empowered to govern every phase of society, you ain't never heard that before.
Yeah.
Well, you heard it coming from me. It didn't come from me. It came through me. It came from God. And what did that identify? The people left out of history, the Twa. You want to talk about creative? They created civilization, real civilization. And they're the foundation of Kemet. Without them, no Kemet. And by the way, I was listening to Dr. Finch. He's doing an advertisement on a new book he's coming up with, where he's going back to Kemet 10,000 BC, which is what I deal with. So I'm going to be interesting to see what he comes up with. You know what I mean? But I deal with 149,000 to 200,000 BC. And if you watch my series, I have a 5-part series on the Twa. Those are so-called pygmies. To be specific, the San people. Those according to mitochondrial DNA. See, I believe in hard evidence. Bones are fine when it's come to historical stuff, but bones are fragments. But mitochondrial DNA is the DNA of the mother. It doesn't disappear. And so when you see that mitochondrial DNA traces humanity back to the San, S-A-N, or Kun, K-U-N, same people, of the Kalahari Desert, they're the first people. And the Biaka Twa of the Congo, they're close to them in terms of being ancient people. And they lay the foundation of global civilization, and you don't even study it. You know what I mean? You start with Kemet. Kemet's your greatest civilization and classical civilization, that is urban civilizations and stuff like that. It's the greatest achievement in human history, but it ain't the beginning. And the foundation is Anu, and the Anu were Twa. And the Twa, the Anu, give birth to dynastic Kemet, and we don't study that. We just deal with 32 to 3,300 BC. We don't go back 6,500 BC or 10,000 BC or 149,000 BC. So you want to talk about creativity? Of course, we come out of that. But then the African and America being put in the position we were put into, then that becomes the essence of our being. You know what I mean? The essence of our being.
The essence of our being. You know what? I need to start getting mics so I can just drop them when y'all talk. Because I'm like, what? All right, God, you said so much. Discipline equals freedom. I love that. African courage. Oh my. All right. So let's just back up for a moment, because you talked about this piping into God, and you've talked about that a lot. And our family, that's one of the things that I really appreciate about Dr. Tashaka, is that he shares, what's specifically happened to him, in terms of his scholarship, but just, he's sharing that part of, his process of just living, which will allow us to be able to look into ourselves even deeper. So I love when you talk about your interactions with spirit, and and I think that also, I feel like when people are very not only gracious, but allow themselves to be vessels, they recognize themselves as vessels for stuff to come through. They don't try to take ownership of it. So yeah.
And you have to give credit to the source.
Yeah.
And I would love to have been brilliant enough to come up with this, but I wasn't, because this just society thing, which I'm going to be dealing with in another way this Saturday on our show, the Dr. Oba Tashaka show on 10 on YouTube and Facebook. And the title is The Impact of the U.S. National Security, State, and Globalization on Black Communities and African Nations. It's part 3 of the rise and decline of the West and the U.S. and how this fall of the U.S. is affecting us in the breakdown of families and communities and the opportunities that it presented for us. So the insights that come through you, through God, one, they only come when you're open. And that means humble. And that means when you realize you don't have the answers. But the key thing is God's mind, I've said this, I think on this show before, in any part is a totality. And in fact, if you ask a Bambara person, how would they describe knowledge? They called it a totality of knowledge. Specifically, when you pipe into God's mind and you've got the foundation, but you don't have the answer, the final answer. So I've been looking for just societies. So I was digging for it, fighting for it, but I didn't have the ultimate answer. And so when I'm asking, God, what did Africans mean by just societies? This is after writing 180 pages on this book, Return to the African Mother Principle of Male and Female Equality, the most important thing I've done in my life. I see this beautiful white light, and without speaking, the light said, the just societies of Africa were, it didn't say that. This is what it said, were societies where, and this is what God said, these are God's words, all the males and females were equally empowered to govern every phase of society. And it's interesting because I was going through a masculine-feminine conflict. I was strong on the masculine, weak on the feminine. I've talked about it on the show before. 5 years, 3 months a year of looking at myself on a retreat, 3 months a year, 5 years, 15 months, cleansing myself, but rebalancing to get this feminine side straight. And so the answer God's given me is also, in terms of my own spiritual experience, the balance that I'm getting of the feminine with the masculine. But God has given me something real deep, because it's all the males and females equally empowered to govern every phase of society. It's the totality. But then God's not giving me a theory separate from reality. God is describing how the Twa operated for a good 130, 140,000 years. And those that still exist, it's how they operate. And that was a global civilization. You hear me?
Yeah.
That was among Native Americans, the South Pacific, Asia, Africa, all over the world. You know what I mean? And that is what's in us. And that's part of why Black families were able to survive from 1865 to 1968, two-parent household. A part of that was in that. It wasn't perfect. It was no longer the balance you had among the Twa, but it was a male-female interaction going on there. You know what I mean? And when most didn't have two nickels to rub against each other, they could stay together. And yeah, we had all kinds of families. So I'm not saying it was all honey and spice and everything nice, but a lot of it was.
Yeah.
It was, because, I was listening to one of our great basketball players. What's a real 7 foot tall brother who announces on TV now?
Shaq?
Yeah, Shaq O'Neal. I was listening to Shaq, see, and you can do that look on Shaq, but I don't like what he did with Trump, going off on this tax break. Take the tax break and vote against them, dummy. You know what I mean? Yeah. But he ain't no dummy. But I noticed when his mama came on the show, this is a 7'1", 230. Now he weighs more than that, all muscle when he was playing, dominant player. Mm-hmm. When his mama came on, what did Shaq do? Yes, mama. This is the same mama that punched out a bus driver when the bus driver insulted the son because he couldn't get a free ride because he was too big. The guy said, if he is 3 or 4 years old, I'm this or that. Boom, boom. She said, you can't say that to my son. Well, what did Shaq say? We was poor. What did we have? Love.
But love.
Love. And what carried us through enslavement? It surely was not the love of the enslaver. It was the love of the enslaved for each other. That carried us through. And so how did we come out? As Naeem Akbar, one of our great Afrocentric psychiatrists or psychologists, said, we came out normal. In fact, we came out more normal than these suckers that had put us through this, because that was some savage behavior on their part. You know what I mean? And we came out with our humanity intact, caring for each other, rough around the edges, had all kinds of issues, some of which we had defined correctly. Some of us had issues on color, all kinds of different. Some of us had issues on patriarchy that most of us weren't into that, but some of us were. We had issues. You would have to. But we came out with our humanity intact, and we looked out for each other.
And we looked out for each other. Yes. So okay. So yeah, we got to figure out that piece. Which is a perfect segue. So the name of the show is Black Love, Black Excellence, Black Love, and Revolution. And so when we're thinking about like our creativity, okay, um, how do we link creativity to Black love in a way that's not a romantic love?
Oh,
Like
that's a good.
like the love that you're talking about.
Yeah. Real creativity comes when you pipe into something higher than yourself,
Mm,
and when you serve something higher than yourself. So just start with romantic love. What is that? That is usually the fact that you're placing someone above yourself, in terms of looking out for their well-being and everything else, and especially when you bring children into the world. But in terms of overall, um, it's when we realize that whatever we are, whatever we're contributing to life, it's just a small part of the greater whole. And so the question is, what are we doing to promote the well-being of the greater whole? And to the extent that we are, that's true love. You know what I mean? And that means that, you know, that comes before money. That comes before whatever our ambitions or whatever is, that comes first. And that love is missing presently, and we need to get it back. It ain't all missing. Look at the people who put their necks on the line to throw Trump out of the White House. Look at the people who have been putting their neck on the line to support brothers who have either been blown away or face being blown away. Look at all the people who have made these sacrifices down through history. You know what I mean? But your generation has made some important statements, so don't underestimate it. And generally, the highest expression usually comes in organized movements. And that's where the real change is that come. And that's where the real creativity is inspired, because when you draw from something higher, your thoughts go higher. I remember I was in the UK, United Kingdom, and I've worked there organizing for nearly 50 years. And a brother came up to me and was saying, well, we seem to be sharper in the 60s and early 70s. Well, that wasn't because we had any more gray matter. It wasn't because people had higher IQs, which I don't believe in to begin with. But it was because people were, not all, but a significant number of our people were serving a cause greater than themselves. You know what I mean? And if you think about God, God has given us the capacity to have free will. God stays out of it and lets us make the decisions. That's what a good parent does. Once they prepared their children and they enter the world, number one, they ain't got no say so anyway. They can try, but at this point, they're on their own track. But that's love. That's love. That's love when you allow somebody else to grow and be themselves. Well, that's what God does with us. And that's what we should be doing with each other, because life is about growth, not trying to make somebody into our image.
Wait, just stop, because you about to drop too much stuff. Wait, we just stop right there. Okay, repeat what you just said. So love is not trying to make somebody in your own image, but
encouraging them to be themselves. Whatever that is. And by the way, the book I'm finishing on Seba is a replacement. Seba, which is the Kemetic word for star, which is what a human being is. Everyone has a light within them. And so it is the system for bringing out the gifts that you have inside yourself. So I'm revolutionary, so I do replacement systems. So this is a replacement system for the Western system that puts you under control by dropping facts on you that are often irrelevant or untrue. But even when they're true, that is not education. That's memorization.
Yes.
That's training. That's what college is. That's what high school is. It is preparing you to serve somebody else. But real education is to prepare you to be yourself. And that's where the joy of life is, you know. And so I don't care what you are, if you're a teacher, if you're a parent, whatever it is, that's the joy in life, is to see someone else shine. And they shine when they're into their own orbit, like a planet or a star,
Yes,
which is
yes,
what you are. You got to be in your own orbit.
yes.
That means you got to know who you are.
You got to know who you are.
And
Yeah.
that's the first step in that process.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, there's some, you know what? I think about all the people who I know who are very genuinely happy, you know, for you if something happens, or they're
Right.
they're just happy just to be, you know, around you, you know, when you're doing whatever you're doing, because you know they know who they are, and they just want to see you be okay, you know, and
Exactly.
they're happy when you're okay, and they're happy when you're doing the thing that you want to do, or whatever, you know. So
That's a real friend. If you have a lover, that's a real lover, because that person wants you to be you. You know what I mean? That's a real good parent. You know what I mean?
yeah.
That's what the person wants. And you may not always know uh, what that person is here to be. That's a process of self-discovery, but you're open to it. And the key thing about love is this: when you can put a light in somebody's eye and a smile on their face,
Mm,
that's love. You know what I mean?
mm,
The Twa had a saying on my show when I was going through the Twa. I gave the example where a Twa elder said they had founded a civilization called Kimi, Kimi. Well, that was Kemet. And they said they had built ships, they had built cities, they had built civilization. And then they said they tired of that and they walked away from it, you know. And then they said, because they weren't really happy, they said just having all that power wasn't what made you happy. They you know, their definition of happiness was when the man could bring the antelope home for his wife and put a smile on her face. And then one of my members said, that's what I'm doing with my wife. You know what I mean?
yes, yes.
That's real love. You know what I
That's
mean?
love.
Putting a smile on somebody's face.
Yeah.
Because then, you know, what you're doing is that smile is reflecting that they are in peace with themselves. They're enjoying their life, and hopefully they're on a path that they're supposed to be on, which is what life is all about. Secure.
Mm.
So what's your roadway in life? You're supposed to be on that path. And anyone that helps you with that is a good friend, whatever, good parent, good teacher, whatever.
So this is, you know, so when we talk about this idea of, you know, of Black love, and you know, you started with the romantic love, but you know, and I was just thinking about, you know, at this time, the time frame that you were talking about, and just like right now, you know, how, you know, we could use a little bit more of Black love, you know, we could use a little bit more of that. And I also kind of feel like it's like it doesn't hurt. You know, it's like it doesn't hurt you to show Black love. Like it doesn't hurt us, you
I
know.
see where Jacqueline Lucian in here is saying, can you consider the following? Explore the letters in love and see the confusion. The letter L is a lion, and the letter V is the same letter in the name Eve, the front part of a woman's body, which she covered up. Try an African word for love. The word love is misleading. The word love is underlining meaning is loving, control, or protecting the vessel or means of birth. Well, every African language has the same word. It's love. It means love. And here's the key point. That is the journey for everybody. That's the key reason we're here, more than anything, through the love of self, because until you know yourself, respect yourself, you can't love yourself. So that's the key to loving everybody else. But my
Mm.
experience with the light, God is unconditional love, love beyond anything you can express. So you can call it kupenda in Swahili. You can use whatever word you want. It means the same thing. You hear me? It does not mean lion. It doesn't mean any of that. It means that it's this vibratory force that's outside of space and outside of time, which is God, that's inside of each one of us. And it's us experiencing that joy through serving something bigger than ourselves and through loving ourselves. Because the first thing is to love yourself. You can't love nobody else unless you love yourself. That is key. The journey for everybody on the planet, I'm talking all human beings, is the journey to find love, which is inside yourself, to express it for humanity or whatever part of humanity you're serving. That's the purpose. Whatever you're doing, when it's on that vibration, it's on the highest level. You know? And you'll see the animal kingdom observes that. You know, you'll see a mother deer, and you'll see how much that mother deer looks after that doe. Or you look at a big elephant and look at how that mother elephant and the father takes care of that little one. You know what I mean? That's the real law, not the survival of the fittest. It's love. You hear me? And I'm a warrior saying this. I'm a peaceful warrior.
You a peaceful.
I don't love my enemies. So get that straight. But I love my people. You know what I mean? And I know that is like the most rewarding thing in life. Why'd I marry again? I'm 66 years old. Why'd I marry again? You know what I mean? I didn't need to. I love myself. I'm comfortable. My best friend is me. You know what I mean? But I wanted the experience of the joy of love with another person that I found in my wife. You know what I mean? I wanted that experience. You know what I mean? And that's the goal of everything in life. It's ultimately love. You know, when somebody's facing leaving here, that's what they think about. The ones they love. You hear me? And if you look at the great ones like Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or others, you know, Fannie Lou Hamer, you know, Ella Baker, others, you know, Queen and Zingle, whatever. Love of their people, you know, that's what drove them. That's what kept them going. You know, that's precious. Money, you can't love money. And if you do, you're making a big fat mistake. Money isn't gonna, you know, heal you. Yeah, you need enough to survive. I'm not denying that, but I'm saying that the joy in life is the love that you get in what you do for others. That's the key.
Yeah, 100%. You know, family, please make sure you like and share this video right there. Make sure you like and share the video. And you know, because I was sitting here and I was just like, I just couldn't wait to bring Dr. Tashaka on. I forgot to announce something. I tell you, you know, we are besides having this event. See, listen, 2023 can be a lovely year. Everyone has to do planning. Okay, just some planning. You get your ticket for the Black Excellence, the Day of Black Excellence in February, and then we are also heading back to Egypt. We're going back to Kemet, and this is when we were at Abu Simbel in Ramesses II temple, and so we're going. HAPI is going. We are, and this is the cool thing about this trip. We're leaving May 25th to June 3rd, but you can pick one or two things. So we have a group of people, you know, that's going to go to Egypt and to Dubai. And then we have a group of people that's going to go to Egypt and take a cruise down the Nile River. And a couple of times we're going to, you know, meet up with each other. So it's going to be a really great experience. But if you have not been to Kemet, or even if you have been, because we have a lot of people that I see actually in the chat who's traveled with us a couple of times now. You know, this is a good time to come, because when you know, Dr. Tashaka is talking about this idea of knowing who you are and loving yourself. I tell you, when you go and you see the creativity of us as people, but it's a really good place to start to get to know who you are. You know, we're going, it's going to be nice. I'm going to put up if you have any more, you know, questions, you want to read more about it, right there, you go to akettours.com. So the tour company, I think this is going to be like their 23rd or 24th visit. to Kemet taking people. And it's owned by Taaqiy Grant, who is also the director and producer and writer of HAPI and 2 other films, Nubia and The Tekken. Back in 99, he started this tour group. And first he was just to kind of go for himself. And he was groomed by another elder, Baba John Watusi, yes, from the African Poetry Theater. And he started this tour company. And since then, he's been bringing Black folks to Egypt and helping them to start, to jumpstart them learning more about themselves and to, understand their history. And so we are going back. It's going to be great. If you can make it happen, it's a nice thing to do for yourself in 2023. And go to aketours.com. How many times have you been to Egypt, Dr. Tashaka?
I don't know, quite a few times.
I love it.
I have a picture of me and Khufu's in the tomb that's on the top. There used to be Khufu's tomb, so I'm actually sitting in it.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, it's a very important experience because it's tangible historical evidence of greatness, so monumental. It's a monumental culture. So
yeah,
monuments are heavy, really heavy. So,
yeah, I like that. Yes. And it's fun. It's so interesting. Like everyone comes from all these different places. We have people that come from, from Europe, from Africa, to meet us from the United States. And we all meet in New York City and get on the plane. And the moment that plane lands, it's like we're family. It is so interesting how that happens. But it's a really nice trip. And the tour operator, Taaqiy Grant, has been doing it for a while. So it's good to go with someone who has, knows his way around. But yes, family, aketours.com, and you can put down a deposit, and you have up until like April 20th to make all your final payments. So you can just pay a little bit every time you get paid or whenever. But it's a good trip. I took my kids this past year and they're still talking about it. And it shows up like just in how they just operate with certain things now. They know when someone's telling them something about, Egypt that just doesn't sound right. They're like, wait, they may not be able to articulate it perfectly yet, but they know when something sounds off. So, it's a good trip.
There's a comment here by P Black 3. Please help me. Are you saying that the spirit is within and not spiritual? Does that mean I should only look within myself, answers and guidance, and not my ancestors? No. What I'm saying when I distinguish between spirit and spiritual, spirit is a being. It's an entity. Spiritual is just a concept. And so we connect with the spirits of our ancestors. Now, being in the West, we'll call it being spiritual. But what's talking to us isn't the spiritual, even though there's things called spirituals. We're not talking about song, it's spirits. So that's the key thing right there. So we contact our ancestors that are spirits. That's how we contact them.
Yeah. And let me tell you, they always pop up. they're always right there.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So now I can understand why this whole creativity could be revolution. But you talked about like the levels of creativity. Like, what are some of the levels of creativity? We know what the top is, right? You know what the top of
And what is our top?
That's when you can pipe in straight with God.
And that leads to what?
The highest what's the word I'm looking for? It's like the highest magnification of love. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, the highest is innovation for us. We call it innovation.
Innovation.
The Dogon call it Sodaya. Sodai. Sodai, a clear word. So levels of creativity. One doesn't sound like it's a level of creativity. And if you get stuck here, you're in trouble. But this is the first stage. It's imitation. You don't learn anything until you get the essence of it down. And in our culture, to know something, you have to be what you know. And the way you be things that you're mastering is to first imitate it. That's how a baby learns from their mother. They imitate. And see, African educational systems are based on this, how a mother teaches a child. That's fundamental. And imitation is mind, body, and spirit. It's not just being able to repeat something. It's a total thing. Western education doesn't administer to the spirit or the body, only the mind. That's what Western education does. And that may be okay for certain things, but basically that's not the path to mastery. So that's the first level of creativity. That is, it's a condition for creativity. Now, some people stay there. Like in music, you'll have some musicians who just play like a lot of other musicians. That's their thing, okay? The culture frowns on that because we want people to find their own voice. But it is the first stage for mastering anything. You got to imitate it. To know it, imitate it. The second level of creativity is when you're bringing different things together. So I'll use music because it's easier to explain. So an improviser in music, which we think is a real high level, is a person who has learned how to play an instrument so that they can play the notes and flow it a little bit. But they'll usually at the imitation level sound like somebody else. But when they're going to get to the point where they can begin to have their own sound, then what they generally do is bring together different, let's say you're a saxophone player, different styles of playing coming from different saxophone players, dealing with different parts of playing the saxophone until they can make some music. And generally under a school. So meaning they'll be influenced by a particular school of music. And so that's called improvisation, where you synthesize together different sounds till they flow, and you add something original of your own, but you're coming under another school. That's what improvising is.
Okay.
That's not the highest level of creativity. And then innovation or sodaya is where you're able to master a field. It could be a field of science, physics, or chemistry, or biology, or a field of music. It could be jazz, or blues, or rhythm and blues. It could be mechanics. It could be a sport. It applies to all areas of life. But it's where you pipe into this higher force and you discover something new, and that is your contribution. And so that's George Washington Carver and Einstein, and all people have this potential. So don't just think we're just talking about Black people, but our culture is wired for this. So our culture has systems for making masters. So my book on Seba, to know the truth is to be the truth, it covers 3 domains. One domain is the domain of teaching, where you're bringing out the light within a person. The other one is apprenticeship, where those who are gifted in a particular area want to move to the highest level. Everybody with a gift doesn't want to be the best. What a shame. What a shame.
Yeah.
Some fear it because they're afraid that if they get to the top, there's only one way to go. That's down, or they're going to be shot at. We're at the top, or it's too much work. Some people can get to the top with very little work. Bird, Charlie Parker, he was gifted so much that after he had some cymbals thrown at him because he wasn't playing very well on the saxophone, he went and woodshedded. He went into the mountains and then came back, and he could do things on the saxophone that nobody else could do because he had special gifts. Some of us have to work to get those things. Others don't have to work as much. Some of us get more, and some of us have to work to get it. But either way, he ascended to the level of creating a new school along with Dizzy and bebop, innovation. You know what I mean?
Innovation.
So that's the highest level. Only 2% in any field are at that level. Only 2%.
2%.
At the highest level of innovation, because there's different types of innovation. The highest level is when you pipe into God's thoughts. George Washington Carver called it thinking God's thoughts. I call it piping into God's mind. You know, and that's where the real breakthroughs come from. That's where you see what hasn't been seen before. It doesn't mean you invented it. You discovered what was already there. That's what that is. Because God's already come up with all of this.
And you were just a vessel to let it flow.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
we know it's just a small part of it.
Yeah. You know, I think about when you're telling the story, I think about when we were, we had, at this point, I think we had shot all of HAPI. So it was all done and, you know, it was pretty much put together, but there was no narration. And we had Lillias White, who has a beautiful voice. She's been on Broadway. She's been everywhere. She was our narrator. And I remember I was talking to, we had booked a session. Okay. We booked a session for her to be, you know, to tape the voiceover, but we hadn't written the voiceover. Okay. And I remember talking to Taaqiy and I was like, oh, did you write it yet? He's like, yeah, I got to write this. You know, he knew he had to write it, but he hadn't sat down to do it, you know, for whatever reason, you know, maybe he was waiting for it to come. I don't know. But I just remember I talked to him like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening. And then I just remember the next morning he had the narration, but I hadn't heard, I think I'd maybe seen it, but it looks very different on paper. I just remember him giving it to Lillias White the next day in the studio, and she's reading it, and I was like, "Oh my God, this narration is the bomb!" Like, how did you just come up with this, like in a night? Like, how did you just, you know? And then, but every time when you talk to him about it, he doesn't really remember how. You know, it's just like what you said. He was just a vessel, and he was just open and was able to write everything down. Because when
a lot of people that comes in the morning. Some people, they're night people, so they'll get it at night. But those are spirits working with you.
Yeah. But, you know, I think it's also just, it's very important for people who witness, you know, Black excellence or witness creativity in others, that it's also our responsibility to tell each other. Because sometimes we just don't know for ourselves. Sometimes because we're so used to doing stuff, we don't understand that it is Black excellence, that is creativity at its highest level, or, you know, like that it's you know, it's something that should be said so that it can help us to become more of who we are supposed to be, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah, and Brother Nefer here is dealing with this when he makes this comment. He says, when you say it's in, is that like when you seem to know the concepts with little previous knowledge? Is that like bringing out what is within? On a fundamental level, it means many different things, but on the fundamental level, it means what you have within you are gifts. Everybody has special gifts. They're good at certain things. These are the things you love doing. Mm-hmm. And so it's bringing that out, those gifts, to know what they are. Now, you have to develop them. If you have mathematical gifts, but you don't go through the system of mathematics, basic math, algebra, geometry, trigonometry, calculus, and so forth, so you got the gift, but you have not, you know, developed the discipline to bring the gift out.
Discipline equals freedom.
But the key thing is to know your gifts. What is it that you love doing? and then to develop those gifts, shape those gifts. And then if you have the desire to try and move to the highest level, not to the highest level higher than somebody else, but the highest that you have for your potential, the highest of your potential. And no one knows what that is until they try. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, Yvonne says amen. Amen to that. Wow. Okay, yeah, discipline equals freedom. I love that. And African courage. And how do you think creativity is revolutionary?
Well, on one level, when you're really creative, it takes courage to express that and
Mm.
take any person. So you have a gift and pursuing that. And you don't know how far you're going to be able to go with that. So it takes courage to do that. And so if somebody's a singer, to stand up before an audience and open their mouth and sing, they don't know whether somebody's going to applaud, that they're not going to like it, they're going to like it. You know what I mean? So it takes courage,
Yeah.
and that is a creative expression. So that's on one level, and it's revolutionary in the sense that you're undergoing change, and it's by being yourself that you're fulfilling that. Real creativity in terms of revolution is being able to break with a pattern that is putting people down, oppressing people, impoverishing people, humiliating people, causing them to cry, you know, bringing pain to people. And so revolutionary creativity is um, opening things up so people have that chance to fully express themselves in a way that helps other people. It's not harmful to others. And so that formula I gave you, all the males and females being equally empowered to govern every phase of society,
Yeah.
that's the basis for it. Because in a relationship, if the male and female each have their say so, and then you come up with whatever it is, then that's something for a good relationship. And in communities, if people really have a say so on how to change their lives, like we got all these homeless people, you think that that's a decision that people made? No, that's a decision that the powerful have made. And so when you have a society where they're all equally empowered, you ain't going to have no homelessness. You didn't have that in Africa for over 140,000 years. You didn't have prostitutes. You didn't have strong armed robbers. You could go from one end of the continent to the other and not be robbed. Why? Because everybody had something. Most people steal when they're hungry or when they're deprived. Yeah, you got some evil people that just do it for other reasons, but for the most part, that's why, you know? So again, that's really the key, that's really the key.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see those are revolutionary acts. Well, you know what? I think I actually have covered everything. I'm gonna be thinking about more. I like these sound bites that you said. Real discipline is freedom, and all of us came here with African courage. Yeah, I think we have to remember that.
All people came here with courage too.
All-
See, here's the thing: is fear is imposed, fear is taught, fear is internalized, fear is not natural. So the African came in with African courage. It's the highest courage.
Mm,
The warrior code in Africa is fearless. There ain't no other warrior code that's fearless. The African warrior code is based on fearlessness. Every other one is about how you cover up the fear and go ahead and do whatever you do in spite of it. But the African, that is the core of it.
wait. Okay. Wait. Just stop right. Okay. So. Okay. Wait. So courage. So okay. So the idea of how we've been thinking about courage is like from a Western standpoint. So even, even though you're getting ready to do something, you may be fearful of it, but you do it anyway. We're like, that takes, you're courageous. You are exhibiting courage. But you're saying that the Africans didn't have no fear. This is like, oh, this is what we're doing. Like they didn't fear anything, like the warriors. They just went all in.
The warriors and the general approach to life. And so you had a kingdom in West Africa, it was the Bambara Kingdom, Bambara, Bambara, and it was called the Segu Kingdom, Segu, Segu. Malcolm X's great grandfather was probably from those people. A lot of people from Louisiana are from those people, you know what I mean? So they had a warrior code of fearlessness. And so the warrior code said this: if you enter the battlefield with an enemy that shows any sign of fear, you must exit the battlefield. It's dishonorable to fight a person who has fear. I'm fearless. My father was. He had 3 fears now: airplanes, hospitals, and jails. Those are all the things he avoided. But the key thing to note, white people ain't nowhere up in there. And he came up in a time where to be fearless took a whole lot more courage than it takes for us now. You know what I mean? He was a one-man army with brass knuckles, fighting his way for his people. And he refused to fight in World War II. Went before the draft board. Malcolm did too, but Malcolm had to go up and drug himself up and act all crazy. My father acted like himself. He said, draft me. I ain't killing no Japanese. They look just like me. By the way, never told my mother this. Told me and my brother. She didn't know this until after he passed. He said, draft me. I ain't killing no Germans. The people lynching my people ain't got no German accent. Draft me and give me a gun, and I'm going to kill every redneck white person I can shoot. And he got a 4F. So, and my father was always coming home with war stories about this white person he had knocked out because he was very light complexion. They thought he was white. They'd use the N-word. Or he worked as a bouncer as a second job. I've said this on my show, but your show hasn't heard this. He had 2 jobs, but he only needed one. He was a longshoreman. And that was one of the best paying, a dangerous job, but one of the best paying jobs you could have, unloading and loading ships. And, he had him a new Buick every 3 years. You know what I mean? My mother worked and he worked to get the down payment on the house, $5,000. Can you imagine? 2,700 square foot house, $5,000. But imagine what people were making then. You know what I mean? So he had a second job as a bouncer. And my mother was always saying he didn't need that second job. And he told my sister why. Because he got licensed to whip white people. He was, because one of his fears was going to jail. He never carried a gun. He carried brass knuckles. You know what I mean? And that was to give him an edge against some, because he was a short guy, but tough. You know what I mean? So, but he had fearlessness when it came to the main order of the day. You hear me?
Yeah.
And so my mother said after he passed, why didn't he tell me that? Because he was secure in his manhood. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you are free of fear, you're free. Wherever you have fear, you're locked down. You're frozen in that moment. And you're taught it. You're taught that you're supposed to fear God. God never said that. Whoever put that in, whatever book you got it from, God didn't write it. I mean, you're supposed to fear the IRS. You're supposed to fear the police. You're supposed to fear. Pure bull. You know? When you're free of fear, you live in the moment. You enjoy every moment. And you're free wherever you are. Fear is the greatest restrictor of human growth and development. Fear. It's a myth.
Wow. Yeah, that's really not what they teach on these Western streets about fear.
Exactly.
Wow.
And we even feel an investment in it, because I don't see big old brothers talking about, well, if I wasn't afraid, look at man, I'd be doing wrong all over the place. It says who? You know what I mean? Says who? You're underestimating yourself. You know what I mean, if you choose to do wrong, you're going to do it whether you're afraid or not. You know what I mean? Huh? That's your
Yeah, that's true.
you know,
That's true.
choice. Yeah.
Wow. Well, Dr. Tashaka, thank you. Thank you for coming on. Um, it's been a lovely evening with you. I actually can't wait to. I got to listen back because you were. I mean, just your opening statement. Was somebody was like, "This is like I love oral history." I was like, "Me too." I was like, but I have to sync. Like when you're talking, I gotta take parts of what you're saying and think about what you're saying, and then push play and listen to some more because you be dropping a lot of gems. Do you have any? Yeah, fear keeps you stressed out too. Absolutely. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got you right.
Yeah, like that. Yeah.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, right there.
You know?
Hmm.
And don't forget, I mean, if you're looking at what's happening in Iran right now, where they're up here hanging people just because men and women are demonstrating against these restrictions on Iranian women, that they're not wearing the hijab, or if they're wearing it the wrong way. One woman was killed because the police said she was wearing it the wrong way, and then they've been hanging men in this case. They've got a number of them that have been convicted with no real trial to speak of. And why? Because they stood up against the authorities. You know what I mean? And so the whole point of public hangings or private, but letting the people know they're going to hang them, is fear. So they can keep them under control.
Yeah.
It's a control mechanism. You know what I mean? Huh? Babies don't come into the world with fear. They're taught it, And so
it's very true.
getting over it is to face it. Fear is an illusion. Whatever you think you fear, walk through it, you'll find out it ain't real. And the ultimate fear that people have is death. Well, everybody's going to die. You know what I mean? As I said before, the Kemite said, life is slow dying. You're dying every day. You're going to fear that? No. Making friends with that makes you really enjoy every minute of life. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep, I'm with you, Yvonne. Exactly. Well, you know what, Dr. Tashaka, you have any more closing remarks?
Yeah, the only thing is watch our show on Saturday. It'll be part 3 of a 3-part series. The first part was on the rise of the U.S. as a global power, and it went through things that America did to come to power as a global power at the end of World War II. The second one, which was last Saturday, explained why America's power went down the tube in 27 years. America's in decline right now.
Yes.
The best proof of decline is who owes who what. And when you are a creditor nation and nations own you, you're on the rise. When you're a debtor nation, you're in decline. That's just one indication, because America's lost every war they fought since World War II, and the Russians won World War II. So that was part 2. And the third one, which is this Saturday at 10 on this station you see up here, is the impact of the U.S. national security state and globalization on Black communities and African nations. This is referring to the decision by America to go on a permanent war footing at the end of World War II, when America had no enemies to fight. And so this is referring to the fact that most of your money that goes to the federal government goes to the military. That's why your roads are run down, the schools are run down. There's a article in the New York Times, I think it was yesterday, the day before yesterday, about how ROTC is being required in a lot of Black schools, not as an option, required. And the Pentagon is saying they haven't required this. Yeah. And so the school districts are doing that. And it's mainly in school districts that are predominantly Black or brown. And that's to condition these kids to go off into the military
Yeah.
and engage in war, because America has been at war for almost every year of its existence. There's just been a few years where they haven't. So that's the national security state. So you got homeless people, some of them are veterans who fought in wars, whose minds are scrambled, who got mental issues, or who just couldn't find a job, or have a job but can't pay the rent, you know what I mean? Along with a whole lot of others. So this one is looking at how these forces have affected Black families, where we have broken families now heavily, and broken communities, and what can we do to bring them back? And that's got to do with your culture and your programs, and you're strong on this issue of economics, and that's got to do with economic empowerment and other things you have to do to see that the economies you build are protected, so.
Yeah. But it starts with, if you don't love yourself,
Right.
then, even if you have money, you're not going to do anything for your community. You're not, it's like, there's a line in HAPI where we say that to have money and no consciousness, it's the same to be conscious with no money.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're poor.
Yeah.
You're poor spiritually.
Yeah. 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 And it's interesting what you said about the ROTC, because I'm thinking about my son's school, who he graduated this year. He's in his first year in college. And I remember when he first got in, what they do is that it's not the ROTC, not yet. It's not like you have to do ROTC, but they dangle a carrot in there. Like, oh, if you do ROTC, you get this. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do that. All these like graduation requirements they take off the table if you just join ROTC, and that's how they sell it to you. It's real. It's very interesting how, things start off. But yes, I can absolutely see that going, being prevalent in Black schools or communities because we really don't have any Black schools. We have communities where a lot of Black folks go to school, but we don't have like actual Black schools. We need to work on that.
Yeah. Well, lady, I enjoy this as usual.
Yeah, so family, listen, I got to get onto the Dr. Oba Tashaka show. You can just go right to YouTube and type in, because now YouTube is doing handles. Everything's a handle. Like, what's your handle? And Dr. Tashaka's handle is the Dr. Oba show. You just type in, and plus he's the only Oba Tashaka. Like, you're the only Oba Tashaka, right, Doctor?
Right.
Yeah. He's the only one. So you can just type his name in, and he'll come up with all his videos. You can see all of his outfits. And, I mentioned, it seems like that's something kind of petty to talk about outfits, but no, his outfits are a reflection of how he feels about himself. The regalness, I can't even think of another word, the baba-ish. I don't even know if that's a word, but it's like, you are dressing in Black excellence, the creativity, all of that. So, yeah, family, we have to support. So make sure if you are, that you are subscribed to both of our pages. Make sure, because Dr. Oba Tashaka, he's on the come up right now. He is picking up steam. And so we need to make sure we are supporting our elders. And it's the least you can do. If you can't, contribute to the Cash App or, or Venmo or however, because all of these shows take money. They're not produced for free. And so any type of, donation that you give, to us, it goes right back into the production of the show and the production of the HAPI movement. So like this activity that we're having February 1st, that's a lot of it is, we're using a lot of the money that we get from donations plus our money to, make sure this happens. But it's really about us finding our Black excellence within ourselves so that we can share it really with our communities. So make sure, family, that you are tapped into Dr. Oba Tashaka's show and to HAPI.
I encourage our viewers to do the same thing with HAPI, because you all are doing good work.
Yeah, we feel it's like it's a mutual love thing. I tell you, it's nice. It's very nice. So, yep, Dr. Oba Tashaka show right there. All right, Dr. Oba Tashaka. Until next time, we'll definitely be having a conversation. We'll have many conversations. We're gonna have many conversations.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, I enjoy you, lady. Keep up the good work.
Yes. You too. You too. All right, family. All right. So I'm just gonna put you backstage. You can hang out if you want to, or you can just call me later and we can do a little wrap up.
Okay.
It's up to you. All right. All right. Thank you. Peace, Baba.
Peace.
All right. He's just Dr. Tashaka is just delicious. Yes, Regina. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for supporting. Yes, thank you. Ogawa, who works with Dr. Tashaka, he's going to drop some links in the comment section so that we can expand on this. And family, make sure you are following his page. You talk about scholarship, he's like old school scholarship. He has straight, when he talks about his shows, people are like, oh, we're going to have a show about, something. No, he has a whole thesis statement for his show. So that's how you're about to learn something. So please, family, make sure that you are tapped in to Dr. Oba Tashaka's show. And family, right here, if you have not gotten your tickets, right here, fam, it's for the event. It's going to kick off Black History Month. It's February 4th in New York City. It's a live event. So if you are in the area, or if you're not in the area, but you want to come and hang out with the HAPI crew and everyone that's up in this that's going to be there that night, and everyone's going to be signing their things that they're bringing in. Like we have Riza Islam, who's our headliner. Dr. Ken Harris, he will be the moderator for the evening. He also moderated our One Africa Power and Unity Conference in Detroit, Michigan earlier this year. And so anybody that was there and saw Dr. Harris in action, you will really appreciate him, in February. And he also runs the National Business League. So he's doing a lot of exciting things over there. But in the house, we're going to have Dr. Susan Tata, Dr. Georgina Falou, Riza Islam, Professor James Small is rolling up in there, Infudishi Juhutimis, and Kaba Kabane. And also, if, a special treat is that all the people that are associated with HAPI, who were in the HAPI documentary. And if you have not seen a HAPI documentary, you've got to go to happyfilm.com and pick it up. You can do Vimeo, or get a digital download, or you can get a DVD. But if you have not seen HAPI, you must see HAPI. We're going to show an extended clip at the event, but most of the scholars that are that live in the area, New Jersey and New York, and even Asar Imhotep, who's out in Philly, he's all coming up. So we're going to have a bunch of the HAPI cast members there. So even though we're showcasing these people right here, because Infudishi Juhutimis and Professor James Small, they were in HAPI. So was Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Dr. Rosalind Jeffries. There's a lot of other people that's in HAPI that will be in the house. So it's a good time, if you got a HAPI poster, to get it signed by everyone, because they're going to be right there. I'm telling you, it's going to be fabulous. Jabari Ozazi, they're going to be all up in the house. Okay, so that's like a whole reunion right there. And then we have some musical performances. We will have the legendary Brand Nubian will be in the house. Now, some of y'all might know, some of you young folks might not know who Brand Nubian is, but everyone else that's not young, that's in this chat, should know who Brand Nubian is. And so they're going to be there performing a couple of shows. And then Jamar Milton. If you have not checked out, Taaqiy just did a HAPI Talks with Jamar Milton and Jabari Ozazi about like two weeks ago. Make sure you check out this young brother. His music is off the chain. Okay, so he's going to be there performing as well. And Lyrical Faith, that's the name of the poet. She's going to be there delivering some poetry. So that's great. I'm telling you, this is all Black excellence. Then we're going to show, like I said, extended version of HAPI. And we're going to also show Amadeuz Christ will be in the house. So he'll be there to sign stuff too. And he has merchandise, but he's going to be showing Out of the Darkness, Heavy is the Crown, Volume 1. He's going to show a special clip, and he's going to talk about something that he ain't talked about nowhere yet. And he's going to, debut it at the HAPI event. So I'm telling you, you want to be there. It's going to be fabulous. We've built in time for a financial tutorial. We're going to have networking time, and we're going to have some vendors there. But the best thing about this is that it's a day of self-discovery, because as we recognize the Black excellence in everyone else, we will be, recognizing the Black excellence within ourselves. Okay, so this is going to be a great event. I cannot wait. One Africa, afterwards, we coined it, and we said that with the One Africa conference, it was nothing but Black love and sage. You walked into the hotel and that's what you smelled. It was Black love and sage. So we can't wait to see what happens in Queens, but it's going to be February 4th. And it's live stream. So I think there's a brother that's from South Africa, Chad, that's in the, he's from South Africa. Chad, you got to get your ticket. And you got to tell everybody else in South Africa that to get your ticket. Because, Black excellence just doesn't stop, or start with African Americans, but it's with, all Africans throughout the diaspora. So it's important that we let everyone know and we all be tapped in. It's something, to be said when we're all looking and listening to something at the same time. There's an energy that is, that I wouldn't have believed until I was there, and even people that were on the live stream was like, they felt the Black love and sage. So make sure, family, that you have gotten your ticket. You don't want to forget. And plus, this is like a really nice Kwanzaa gift. I don't know, somebody got this for me for Kwanzaa. I'm like, wow, this is so nice, because it's going to be a day of Black excellence. It's going to be really special. And family, like I said, we are going to Kemet May 25th to June 3rd. And so you can just visit our website, ACAT Tours, and you can find out more about traveling with us. There's a lot of people that was in the chat that has traveled with us. I saw Joelle, I saw Tiffany, all up in the chat who have, they've rolled to Egypt with us. So yeah, right there, ACAT Tours. Yes, you know what, I agree. I'm gonna put this comment up right here. Yes. Ogawa, Black excellence is the key to Black empowerment, 100%, 100%. And our creativity is our genius. God, that was just a lot. Yes. All right, family. So, my man's not here to say it, Professor James Small. But when he is here, I always let him say it. But since he's not here, I'm going to say it. It's been really good spending time with you. But I'm going to say peace and blessings.
I don't know what we can talk about in this nation without talking about white superiority, honestly.
Who defines the meaning of God also defines the relationship between economy and God.
African Americans spent $1.3 trillion last year, making us the 16th wealthiest nation in the world. Why have we not turned those riches into wealth to develop our community?